Thank you for talking to me here about ESPs, external service providers, cloud service providers. Really excited to discuss this today. There's been a lot of talk with the Cyber AB. Every month, the Cyber AB talks about this, and there's obviously a lot of confusion because they wouldn't keep talking about it if there weren't confusion. And I see a lot of posts on LinkedIn, responses to posts. People are very confused about what an ESP is, what a CSP is, and then depending on those definitions, exactly how they interact with the assessment. You know, what exactly has to happen during an assessment in the different scenarios. So as we've been talking here for a few minutes and a little bit off record, I guess, and now we're on record, hopefully. I've got a chart that I drew here that I posted a month or so ago on LinkedIn, and just wanted to talk to you about it today and give you my thoughts on the chart and get your feedback on the chart, and we can ask each other questions back and forth and so forth, and hopefully enlighten people and make it a little bit more clear about ESPs and CSPs and how they fit into assessments, who has to be assessed and how.
I think people are going to find the chart very, very helpful. I sat through the Cyber AB discussions for April, May, and the final question that they dealt with on CSPs in June. And I was still just a little bit confused, and I definitely found the chart very helpful.
Awesome.
So,
awesome. So what do you want to do with this chart? You want to just go through it, kind of each path through it, and then kind of give examples as we go, maybe?
Well, I think maybe it might not be a bad idea to give a little definition first, because
Okay.
I know for myself, a lot of it was like, well, what exactly is an ESP? What differentiates the different types of ESPs?
The different types of ESPs, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so ESP stands for external service provider. So external means not in your company, you as the OSC, the organization seeking certification.
Right.
It's not in your company, it's another company that you hired, or you maybe even an individual who's on a 1099. So we're thinking information security here, but this definition goes way above and beyond information security. It means any company that you're hiring for anything in your organization is an external service provider. So, for example, your lawn service person is an external. Yeah.
No way. Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Your lawn person, your plumber, your roofing person. Let's say that you're renting an office space and you are responsible for keeping the roof. You have a roofing person come out. You have a heating and air conditioning person come out. These are all external service providers. Now, do they have to be assessed for CMMC? We'll find out in a second. The answer is no. So don't worry. Your gardener. Let me just give one caveat. Anything that either of us say today, there should be a caveat of it depends, just like any attorney would say it depends. So we're going to get both of you and I think, are going to give the answer for 99% of the cases. But there's going to be some case out there where the gardener just might need to be certified, or the HVAC person just might need to be certified. And those kind of situations would be where they're going to run into CUI, even though they don't really want to, but you know, it's running through the cables in the building, for example, or your gardener has to come in to pick up a check or something, and you've got stuff that's CUI that's on a desk. So you need to make sure that person signs in and out at least If you're on a military installation, maybe the gardener would know where all the buildings were and where the utilities were for those buildings, because the gardener would be driving over like manhole covers and things like that. So maybe the gardener knows in that case, but we're going to talk about just the normal everyday cases, right? So the
Alright.
gardener wouldn't be, the plumber wouldn't be, painter wouldn't be. Now let's go on a little bit further. What about your accountant?
Well,
Would,
he's
would
paying
your
checks.
He's paying checks,
But would
right?
could it be possible that he would be paying somebody? Well, oh gosh, that's a tough question. It really
Yeah.
is, because what is he exposed to as he's paying checks or
Yeah.
handling books?
Does he know a specific contractual line number of something that has to be delivered and that he's paying a check per that line number? And perhaps on the memo of the check, he puts something that's not public information. Then maybe there's some scope there for the accountant. I don't
Some of
know.
those, maybe widgets for a project, I could see that if you're paying a
Yeah,
sub, or even if it's COTS, that off the shelf stuff, if it's got a different application, it might actually cause a problem, mightn't it?
maybe, maybe. Yeah. So in general, probably not for the accountant, at least not for CUI. For FCI, which remember is federal contract information, things that are in the contract or part of the execution of the contract that are not publicly available, meaning you can't go to sam.gov or you can't go to usaspending.gov or any other similar website and get information about something. Then that becomes federal contract information. And then there are controls that you have to put in place for federal contract information to protect it. Not nearly as much as the CUI, the controlled unclassified information, but
Right.
maybe a little bit. I can't think of a reason that the accountant would ever need to know anything CUI. So anyway, then
Hmm.
there's attorneys, of course. We can. Well, I'll talk some more about attorneys in a second. Let's just gloss over that for a minute, and then of course there's what people really think about when they think about ESPs. They're thinking about managed service providers. So we've got this company that's down the street from us, and they're geeks on the go, so to speak. I've seen that name all over the place for, IT people that will come out and fix your network and fix your Wi-Fi and install software.
Right.
So geeks on the go, you think, oh yeah, they're probably in scope for CMMC. Probably, not necessarily though. So let's go through all of this chart. If you don't mind, we
Oh,
can just go
no,
piece by
let's
piece.
go. Let's go. Let's
Okay.
see what you've got here.
Okay, so this is the main chart. What I've done is I gonna make this presentation mode here rather than in Visio. I like to draw in Visio. So, okay, so the first one, I we're just gonna go from the left side of the chart and kind of make our way to the right side.
Mhm.
So, are you using an external service provider? So, let's just say you do everything in-house. Then that's it. You don't have any external service providers for CMMC. That's the easiest one.
So nothing's in scope.
No, nothing's in scope. You do all your lawn care, you do all your attorney stuff, you do, your accountant, you do your payroll. Everything is completely done in-house. Okay. Next one is you do have some company that you hired.
Mhm.
So, yes, we do. And the first question we have to ask is this ESP, is this external service provider, a cloud service provider? Hey, so what do you think of that question?
Well, I think you need to know what a cloud service provider is.
Yeah, I think so
I think
too.
most of the people we deal with will, but there is always someone who doesn't quite get it. I remember not too long ago, a DBA asked me after she'd been here for 5 or 6 years, so what is this cloud thing anyway? Uh, so I had to explain to my friend that, yeah, what a cloud was.
Yeah,
So obviously, it's a business or a service provider that provides you cloud-based services. So it
yeah,
could be software as a service or infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, security as a service. Those
yeah.
are good examples. And as defined, it has to be ubiquitous, ubiquitous. There, let me say it right. Convenient, and oh gosh, what's the other one? On demand, available on demand.
On demand.
All
Yeah,
right. And if you're handling FCI and CUI, you should probably be working with a cloud service provider who is either FedRAMP moderate authorized or FedRAMP moderate equivalent. And I
right.
think under a better understanding of what those are might be good as well.
Oh, okay, that sounds good. So I think you're spot on with that cloud service provider definition. Ubiquitous, on demand, and what was the other one?
Convenient.
Convenient. Okay. So let's go to two extremes. Let's go to two extremes. Let's go to one extreme where you have a company that they provide um, network storage for your files.
Okay.
Okay. Similar to OneDrive, okay, or SharePoint or Google Drive, similar to something like that. And actually, it's provided by Geeks on the Go, the guys down the street.
All right.
And Geeks on the Go is every time you see Geeks on the Go, Scott comes out. But there's this mysterious guy, John, that owns Geeks on the Go. And if you ask Scott anything, he always defers to John. But when you call John, email John, you never get a response. He's he's like a phantom guy that may not exist. And you chase him for 4 months, telling him that you need this network file system. Finally, you get a hold of him and you tell him kind of what you need, but he's not sure. And then a month later, he comes back with a proposal. It's a good price, by the way. And that's why you keep messing with this guy. And the bottom line is, it takes about 9 months to get the cloud service up and running because he's providing everything very custom to you. At the end of the day, they've got some racks of servers in their office that they built specifically for your company, and it does exactly what you want it to do. And if you ever needed to make any changes to this, then you've got to go through a whole new contractual negotiation. It's going to cost money. It's going to take some time. This is not convenient, Laura. It's not ubiquitous.
No,
And
it's
it's certainly
not.
not on demand. Okay. So is this a cloud service provider? No, not according to NIST, because it doesn't meet those three definitions. But do they provide cloud services? Yes.
Yeah.
That network share is a cloud service once you finally get it up and running. Okay. So those are two extremes. And of course, there's fuzzies in between the extremes.
Right.
So unfortunately, we can't define those fuzzies here because I was talking to an attorney last week, and we actually had lunch together, and he read through 32 CFR, and there were so many words in 32 CFR that don't have good legal definitions. And when they don't have good legal definitions in 32 CFR, then at some point, those definitions are going to get adjudicated by the courts. So ubiquitous, convenient, and on demand. Those are fuzzy definitions.
Right.
Yeah. So we know that the example with Geeks on the Go, that's not a cloud service provider. Those guys are providing cloud services, but they're not a cloud service provider. On the other hand, you do have Microsoft that has OneDrive or Google that has Google Drive, and they are certainly cloud service providers because in about 5 minutes, anyone with a credit card can go and sign up for them. So it's easy, convenient, on demand, ubiquitous.
Get it from everywhere. Yeah.
You can go from everywhere. Yeah. So let's go through the chart here. So if you have an ESP that's a cloud service provider, in other words, they really are ubiquitous and on demand and convenient. And the first thing that you have to do in that situation is to, let me see if I can get my screen working here. Ask yourself, does this ESP store, transmit, or process CUI? So let's go back to Geeks on the Go. No, not Geeks on the Go. Geeks on the Go is the other way on the chart. It's the no. This would be like Amazon, AWS, Google, OneDrive. So you're putting CUI on there. You're developing some software. You're doing some drawings, making plans for something, technical specifications, whatever it is that your company is doing with the DoD. You're putting it on that shared cloud drive. So Amazon, Microsoft, AWS, whoever it is, they are storing, transmitting, and processing CUI. So those services like Google or Microsoft are ubiquitous, they're on demand, and they're convenient.
Absolutely.
So they're definitely a cloud service provider, and they're definitely providing cloud services. So in that case, they need to be FedRAMP moderate authorized or equivalent. And if that's the case, then the assessor for CMMC can use their CRM, their customer responsibility matrix, and that can be used in the assessment to evaluate the controls for which the cloud service provider is responsible.
Okay. But what
There's-
differentiates, sorry, what differentiates the FedRAMP moderate authorized from the FedRAMP moderate equivalent? Because I see on your chart that that's mentioned as well.
That is. So FedRAMP moderate authorized. Authorized means that a government agency has sponsored a cloud service provider to get FedRAMP certification. And I'm not sure whether that means completely financially sponsored or it just means that they have signed up to be sort of their oversight body, so to speak. But whatever the case is, an authorized cloud service provider, FedRAMP authorized cloud service provider, has been sponsored by some government agency. It could be the Department of Veterans Affairs. It could be the Forest Service. It could be the Department of Agriculture. They sponsor the company. Then the company gets FedRAMP assessed by a 3PAO, not a C3PAO, but a 3PAO that assesses FedRAMP. And then that government agency continues to monitor and oversee the cloud service provider throughout the life of their certification.
Okay.
One thing that is notable with that is FedRAMP is much more in depth than CMMC. People think that CMMC is just so difficult. FedRAMP is at least 3 times more difficult than CMMC.
Wow.
With more controls, more assessment objectives. It's difficult, it's expensive, it takes a long time.
It sounds like something that once you make it, you want to keep it.
Once you make it, you want to keep it. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So when they're authorized, there could be some of these controls, a few of them, that the government agency that sponsored them said, I don't think that is that big of a deal in your circumstances with the kind of services that you're providing and so forth. So we're going to give you an ATO, an authority to operate, despite the fact that you don't meet all of the FedRAMP requirements. You meet most of them, but the ones that you don't meet, we've evaluated and we say, it's okay. We're going to accept that risk.
So it might be like less relevant for a certain situation.
Right, right.
Okay.
The equivalency, on the other hand, has got two big differences. One strict and one not as strict as the authorization. So this on the strict side, there's no government agency that is able to say we accept this extra risk because you're not compliant with a certain control or an assessment objective. So because of that, in order to get FedRAMP equivalency, a company who's providing these cloud services has to meet every single one of the assessment objectives for FedRAMP.
Okay.
Every single one of them. There can be no poems. Absolutely perfect score. So it's even harder for companies to get the moderate than it is for them to get authorized. Now, here's the question. What's the downside then? Why wouldn't we just want to go with moderate providers? And the answer is that the government agency that sponsored the authorized providers, they are there as an oversight authority to make sure that these cloud service providers continue to be compliant between assessments. Whereas if you have an equivalency, that just means that somebody came in one time and they said, right now on this date at this time, you guys are completely compliant with every single objective for a cloud service provider for FedRAMP. That's it.
But there's no oversight.
There's no oversight. There's no oversight. So let's talk about a really crazy scenario here. Company comes along, it's a startup company. They've got some angel investors. They're using, the founders are using some of their personal money. It costs them, let's just say $1 million to get FedRAMP moderate equivalency. So they get this. It takes them 1.5 years. They're paying people on their staff. They don't have any revenue coming in from FedRAMP-ish business. They've blown through almost all of their money, and they think they're going to get a bunch of clients after they get their equivalency. And the clients just don't come quite as fast as they had hoped. So now they are really low on cash. Nobody's watching them. So what if they drop their subscription to their security cameras? What if they didn't renew their antivirus? Just think of all the terrible scenarios, and nobody's going to catch them until either the next assessment comes around, in which case they might be compliant at that point. They might get back to compliance, or a really bad data breach happens and they get exposed as, oh, we were FedRAMP equivalent and we passed, and then we didn't keep all the safeguards in place, and all of this CUI is just spilled out there from hundreds of companies maybe that are using our services. So it's a really big risk. And so what I tell implementation clients when I'm doing implementation work, make sure that you are comfortable with the company that is going to be providing cloud services if they are not FedRAMP authorized. If they're just FedRAMP equivalent, make sure you are comfortable with the stability of the company and their ability to continue doing business over the long term.
Right, because if they go out of compliance, you go out of compliance.
You go out of compliance, and a cloud service provider is a huge piece of your technical solution.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, the same thing could be asked if you had a FedRAMP authorized provider that went out of business. We've seen over the years, we've seen large companies that we thought were in really good shape, like Enron, that suddenly we're not in good shape anymore. So if one of the large companies that provide cloud services that are FedRAMP authorized suddenly became insolvent, we could potentially have the same problem with FedRAMP authorized ones. I think it's going to be less probably with FedRAMP authorized, since there's a government body that's watching them on a regular basis and sponsoring them, but it's just hard to tell. Anyway, let's go on here. Time is ticking pretty quick.
Oh
we don't
my
want
gosh. Yeah.
we don't want to bore people too much with all of these scenarios. So that was one scenario. Another scenario is they don't store CUI. All they store in their cloud service. Now they're a cloud service provider, but they actually don't store anything that's either that is related to CUI or FCI in any shape or form. Nothing. They don't store your logs. They don't store any contract information. Maybe you're using them to store personal data about your employees. Their vacation balances, their time card things, their tax information, stuff like that. It has nothing to do with federal contracts or CUI. The answer is, well, not only do they not have to be FedRAMP authorized or equivalent, but they don't have to have any certifications at all. So you can sign up with anybody for that. And a good example of this, by the way, is Dropbox.
Okay.
Dropbox, not Box. Box is FedRAMP authorized. Dropbox, on the other hand, is a cloud service provider that does not have a FedRAMP authorization. So if you're using Dropbox and you're just storing general information about your company there, like personnel files, that might be that might be something that you could look into and perhaps save money, or maybe you like the service of the non-FedRAMP supplier a little bit better. But the point is, you have to have a lot of separation between that provider and anything that has to do with your government contract, whether it's contractual information or whether it is the CUI. Okay, next piece. So we did the whole left side of the chart. We did one thing we didn't do on the left side of the chart here. I guess I didn't have it highlighted, so I'm going to move my mouse here. Maybe you can see it. This one over here. So they're not doing FCI, CUI, anything like that. They are a regular cloud service provider, like Dropbox. And they're not FedRAMP authorized. They are providing security protection data, though. And what that means is you're doing something like storing your log files over there. Your log files shouldn't have any contract information, no CUI. It's just, here's when James logged on. Here's when Laura logged off. We had an unauthorized attempt to log on from some country in Asia. Okay. But nothing, of course, would be nothing, no confidential information, no sensitive information would be spilled if that company, if that information was breached. So in that case, the cloud service provider is kind of in scope, but they don't have to have the FedRAMP authorization or equivalency. They just have to provide a CRM, a customer responsibility matrix, showing what they actually do for your company. And during the assessment, the assessor will look over that customer responsibility matrix and make sure it makes sense. The definition is very, very small with this. So Matt Travis talked about this in a C3PAO meeting not too long ago. If they're providing, let's just say, file storage, then the assessor is not going to be looking at whether they screen employees. The assessor is not going to be looking at their Wi-Fi, for example. Okay. They're going to be just looking at things that just have to do with that little narrow piece. What does that mean? Well, it's kind of the same question as what does adequate and sufficient mean? What does ubiquitous mean? What does convenient mean? Yeah, so there's fuzziness there. So be careful with that. Each assessor that you have may look at slightly different things, but in general, it certainly should not be all 110 controls or 320 assessment objectives.
Right.
Okay. Let's move on here to the right side of the equation. So the right side of the equation is that we have a company that's a cloud service provider. They're providing, not cloud service provider, but they are may or may not be providing cloud services. So Geeks on the Go, what we talked about a second ago, they've spent months and months negotiating with you. You finally got John on the phone, and he spent another couple of months building out this specialized file storage thing for your company.
It is not by definition a cloud service.
He is not a cloud service provider, but he is providing cloud services because
sorry about that. I misspoke.
Since that rack of equipment lives in John's office a mile away, then it's in the cloud. Yeah, it's not at your.
It's not at your problem with that ubiquitous, convenient, and on demand. Ubiquitous.
Right. So they're not a cloud service provider. So in that case, you have to ask yourself two questions. First, do they process CUI, store, process, or transmit CUI? And then the second thing is, do they handle any of that security protection data that we talked about a second ago, logs, things like that? So if they store, transmit, process CUI, again, we're talking about Geeks on the Go here that have built out this special thing for you, then in that case, then they would need, they do process CUI for you, then they would need their own level 2 CMMC certification. So Geeks on the Go at this point would need to go through the whole process of becoming compliant with NIST 800-171. They would need to go to a C3PAO and get an assessment from a C3PAO.
John's not going to do that in a timely manner.
John's probably not going to do that, so it's probably time to move on from John. But assuming that John agrees and actually is able to pass, then once John passes, then Geeks on the Go would provide your organization with a CRM, and the assessor for your organization would look at that CRM. They would look at all of the things that the company's doing for you, and then they would ask for the body of evidence from Geeks on the Go, the same one that was assessed by the other assessor, and then Geeks on the Go would need to be available for your company to set in on your audit and answer questions. Okay. Now, if they don't handle CUI for you, then the next question is for Geeks on the Go, do they store your logs? Do they handle your security protection data? And if the answer is no, then they're just like Dropbox that doesn't have a FedRAMP certification. And they're completely out of scope because they're just handling your personnel records and information about your building. We changed our air conditioner 8 years ago, and it's probably getting time, that kind of thing. Right. So it's not sensitive information. It doesn't have anything to do with the government. So they're not in scope.
Right.
But if they do handle those logs, that's the security protection data, then it's back to the same thing again with, well, they don't need a whole certification, but just for the pieces that they handle on your organization's behalf, they need to provide a customer responsibility matrix for that. And then they will need to set in on your assessment so that the assessor can ask them questions that are just relevant to those very narrow things that they do for your company.
That makes sense. Now,
It's still a maze, though. It's still a maze.
it is
It's
a
crazy.
maze. It is a maze, but it's nice that, it's somebody's made chalk marks on the wall. I can go along here. Look, I make this corner and I go down here. I think
Exactly.
that is very, very helpful. And wow.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it clarifies things for many people, and definitely anybody who has any questions, um, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Laura. I'm sure you take questions too.
Oh
So
yeah. Take
yeah,
questions all the time. And
take
now,
questions all the time. So
are you going to make this available so people
I'm
can
gonna
download it?
I am gonna put it on LinkedIn, and I'm also gonna put it on YouTube,
Okay.
and we'll then both of us can repost it. And of course, anybody that wants to repost after that is welcome to do it also. And we'll both take questions, and looking forward to hearing from people. I guess it's an interesting topic, and hopefully this helps put it to bed.